By now, many of us have heard unsettling stories about long wait times and distressing experiences within the healthcare system. Some of us have even faced these challenges firsthand. This issue has quickly become a top concern for Canadians, and understandably so. To effectively address these problems, though, we must be equipped with data. Today, we have Dianne Martin, Chief Executive Officer of the Registered Practical Nurses Association of Ontario, also known as WeRPN, to help us do just that. She's here to unveil the findings from their recent annual survey titled The State of Nursing in Ontario, a 2023 Review. The results, I must warn you, are deeply troubling. Welcome back to What She Said, Dianne.
Thank you so much for having me, Candace.
So let's start. Give us an overview, please, of what maybe were the most striking findings from your annual survey.
So we do it every year because we want to see, since the pandemic, is we want to see how nursing's doing coming out of the other side. And I fully expected this year that what we would find would be that nurses were starting to recover, that there was starting to be some easing of the pressures that have been on them all these years. But what we found was actually the opposite. The pressures are still increasing. For example, 92% of nurses say their workloads are still increasing.
That's staggering.
91% have witnessed patient care be negatively impacted. And 62% say that they have seen patients whose health declined because of the inability to provide them with the care that they needed.
Unbelievable. And another critical revelation from this report is the potential mass exodus we could be looking at.
Absolutely. We found that 62% were considering leaving nursing. And of that group, the largest amount, 59% of them, were not just leaving nursing in Ontario, but were leaving healthcare altogether. The remainders talked about leaving for other jurisdictions, other places in Ontario, or even more abroad.
And there's also a trend for nurses to be moving away from direct patient care roles. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so many nurses told us that what they had done was stayed in the profession because that's what they know, but had moved away. One nurse, and I'll give you an example of it, the quote, one nurse said, "I moved away from long-term care where I worked for years. I could no longer maintain my position in good faith." So a lot of them have moved away from direct patient care, not because it's too hard, although it is exhausting. It is causing a lot of healthcare issues for nurses. But the main reason that nurses describe is the moral distress that they feel. That's what we call it when you actually witness patients in need and know how to assist them with what they need, but you physically cannot do it because of the low staffing. That is what nurses describe as the biggest reason that they have to leave the bedside.
And I think that probably leads into this next point, is that there's been a drop of pride for nurses in what they do. That's very disturbing to me.
So this is what I think, if not will become the biggest story as we move forward. And we will continue to do this every year. But nurses at the height of the beginning of the pandemic, when everything was chaotic and we weren't safe and we were scared, 67% of them said they'd never been prouder to be a nurse. Now that amount is down to 31%. And what we are seeing in the province is a very large group of nurses whose pride in their profession has started to erode. We have fewer applicants into nursing programs, is what I'm hearing from the schools. And I think, Candace, the really most interesting thing to me is that when I was young and in the late 70s, early 80s, and decided to head into nursing, I kind of knew that I was choosing the traditional route for a career, and that the trailblazers that I went to school with went into engineering and into law and a variety of other things. And I loved nursing, so I said, well, I'm just going to do the traditional thing. And then over the years, we have built this profession up to be something that is desired, and where people, primarily women, but all people, can see I can gain knowledge and really engage in high level learning and performance in this profession. And now all that headway that we took to make this primarily female profession into something that is strong and desired has been lost so quickly. And I think this is going to be the story in the future, the rebuilding.
I think this next point that we're going to discuss, though, is going to be what people in Ontario in particular are going to be most concerned about. And that is that a lot of nurses are considering going to private agencies or leaving the province entirely, which, we're seeing this erosion of our healthcare system entirely. And that right there is a prime example, I think.
So, I cannot blame a nurse who says, I can't get a day off, I can't get vacation, taking control of their lives and moving to a private agency. It's completely understandable. But the allowing the use of these agencies within our hospitals, long-term care homes, etc., organizations can be paying up to 4 times the amount to get those nurses who used to work for them back into their building. And the amount of those dollars that are profit into the pockets of the people who own these agencies is money that was meant to be spent on nursing. And so what we have is spending the normal amount on or more on nursing, but having short staff shifts every day as a result. And someone needs to step in and say it's not okay to be using these nursing agencies to staff our publicly funded healthcare system.
Absolutely. So, of course, I know you have a plan. I know you didn't come here with all of these stats to share with us without sharing a plan. So maybe you could share your 4-step plan.
So what we're planning, first of all, the report itself is you can find on the internet at the website called damagereport.ca. I encourage everybody to read it. But first of all, what we need to have happen is for the legislation to happen to create manageable workloads. And we do that by creating a nurse-to-patient ratios, where it is legislated that a nurse can take care of a reasonable number of patients for that particular type of care. So, for example, in a trauma unit, it'll be 1-to-1 nursing. In a regular med-surg unit, it might be 4 or 5 patients per nurse. It will depend on what kind of nursing is happening. Secondly, we have to prioritize retention with growth opportunities. So we have to streamline education and funding for education so that nurses can have a career trajectory that makes sense, and that they can know that they, by becoming nurses, are investing into a future that's limitless. We need to establish professional compensation. The Bill 124 was struck down by the courts, and arbitrators have now given nurses a good start to solving this problem. The government is appealing that decision, but it would not be in the best interests of absolutely anybody in this province to have that be successful, and I quite doubt that it would. And we need to guard against cost inefficiencies and privatization of healthcare. When you talk about the privatization of healthcare, privatization of staffing might be one of the first steps, like you talked about in the agency nursing, where once a critical mass of nurses were to move over to that kind of staffing, where, by the way, they don't have pensions and benefits and the things that we normally have in nursing, eventually those wages would then drop to where they normally are, but nurses would have lost all the gains they've made over the years. So we have to do all of these things to safeguard healthcare in Ontario.
All right. Well, very concerning report. I know that you're on it, though, and I know you'll be back with an update at some point. So in the meantime, where can people find out more, keep up with this, and get involved themselves to help make sure that we have a strong healthcare system in Ontario?
If you go to that website, damagereport.ca, there is an open letter that we encourage everybody to to sign and send to their local representatives as well as the leadership of government in Ontario. But also make a point of talking to your politicians about the need to ensure that the healthcare is available, that it is not for profit, that the money that we give in our tax dollars to healthcare directly goes to healthcare.
All right, excellent. I'm going to head on over and sign that right now. And I'm also going to put it in the liner notes when this goes out on podcast for people to find. Dianne, thank you so much for joining me. As usual, very enlightening conversation.
Thanks, Candace.